Kia ora, Graham Smith here from ALEC again. This presentation is just a quick review of some of the ground that we've covered and also just a bit of a preview in terms of what's ahead, so welcome back. Alright, we'd like to kick this one off with a whakatauki or a Māori proverb, and this is the one we like to use for this particular section of the training. Mā te mahi ka mohio, mā te mohio ka marama, mā te marama ka matatau. So the interpretation of that is this in English: through practice comes knowledge, through knowledge comes understanding, through understanding comes expertise. And I think this idea of expertise following understanding, and of course understanding following on from knowledge, fits in nicely with what we're going to discuss over the next section of the course. But before we get into that, just a quick heads up again so you can see where you're at in terms of the training, and this slide just shows how the course tracks through the 7 basic areas required by the unit standards and the qualification. Of course, these 7 areas make up what we call the baseline knowledge for embedding literacy and numeracy. You need to complete the final 4 assessment tasks. These are task 4 on diagnostic assessment, task 5 your embedded literacy and numeracy delivery, task 6 assessing your learners' progress, and task 7 evaluating your embedded literacy and numeracy project work. Very quick revision here. You're probably fine with this, but I'll just go over it briefly. So just to recap, embedded literacy and numeracy is all of these things here on the screen. It's about planned, deliberate acts of teaching and learning. It's about identifying the literacy and numeracy skill gaps of your learners. It's also about identifying the literacy and numeracy demands of your course, and it's really the difference between the demands of your training versus the skill gaps of your learners that tells you where you need to be embedding. So your embedded approach needs to be informed by the learning progressions. Typically we're working with trades or vocational trainers, although not always, but that's been our major focus for this qualification. And it's important to remember, this is not literacy and numeracy for everything. We're just after the very specific literacy and numeracy that your learners need to do your work or the study that they're involved with. Do you remember this from task 2 or section 2? It's great to go over some of these things. Hopefully by now you will be thinking about these concepts from a Māori worldview and embedding these into your training as well. So this is the idea of tuakana teina and ako. Tuakana, in some cases you're the tuakana, literally the older brother or older sister. Your learners are your teina, the younger siblings. Of course, this dynamic also works in your classes with the groups that you have as well. Ako, of course, means to teach and to learn, and this is the idea of teaching and learning as a conversation, as a reciprocal arrangement between the teacher and the students. Some other concepts from earlier on, these come from section 2 as well, and again, things that need to be hopefully underpinning the training and the work that you're doing with your learners. So mana atua, mana tangata, mana reo, mana whenua, mana Aotearoa. So you might want to go back and just review some of these things, but basically the idea that it's okay, sometimes it's appropriate to incorporate spirituality, however you define that, building in ways for people to contribute, giving opportunities for people to use language. Of course, literacy is all about language, but what about te reo Māori? Are there opportunities for people that speak te reo to use it in your training? Whenua, to do with the land and belonging. How are you going to make your course, your class, your training environment a place that people really belong to? And the last one there, mana Aotearoa, to do with experiential learning. What can you do to get out of the classroom, get your learners out of the classroom and get out into the real world? Or if that's not possible, can you bring the outside world into your classroom? Alright, just another review here as well, and if you've been part of one of our face-to-face training sessions, of course there's a handout with this. So essentially here we're reviewing the 3 learnings from the TEC, and I'll just skip over. Here's what they are: knowing the demands, top left hand side, knowing the learner over on the right hand side, and knowing what to do. And you would have done task 3 by now, to do with knowing the demands. That's identifying the task and text demands against the learning progressions. So these are the literacy and numeracy demands of your course or of your workplace environment, and the activities and things that people need to do there. On the other side there, knowing the learner, using diagnostic processes, figuring out what people know, and our system is based on the learning progressions. The difference between those two tells you the next thing, knowing what to do. And from there, you move on to the kind of things that we're starting to talk about from here on in. Writing embedded literacy and numeracy learning outcomes that are underpinned by the progressions, selecting the literacy and numeracy focused teaching activities that you need to be delivering, and these of course again are underpinned by the learning progressions, planning and delivering targeted lessons, and using the embedded literacy and numeracy activities that you've created or adapted that are again supported by the learning progressions.